A business owner is responsible for making many decisions. One way to actually make the decisions easier is by using something called business statistics. Business statistics can be used for a number of different applications, such as make or buy decisions, or actually manufacturing a product and deciding how much play or essentially slack you're going to allow to occur in the actual production process. Now, when it comes to business statistics, it all revolves around the probability of an outcome occurring. So what we do is we conduct some type of experiment. Now, the experiment could be, again, something as such as producing a product or just taking a survey. Now, whenever you're actually conducting experiments, you must make sure that the sample is going to represent the general population well. And one way you can guarantee that is essentially having a large enough sample size. If your sample size is too small, it won't be a good representation of the general population. Now, once the experiment has been conducted, we then graph the results on some type of chart. Now, those are plotted, again, on the chart, and based on the plot, we can see where essentially the distribution is, or where most of the events are actually occurring. Now, there's essentially going to be an average. That average is going to be our very middle, and it's going to produce a curve of some kind. So again, we have plots all over our graph, and essentially there's going to be some type of curve. Now, depending on where the plots are, you might have something called a normal distribution, which is really what we're looking for. Normal distribution is in the shape of a bell curve. Essentially, it looks like a bell, in which the very middle is the average, or essentially what is most common to occur of this outcome for this experiment. Now, every far away you go from the middle of the bell curve, essentially you have something called standard deviation. Now, one standard deviation from the middle, the average, essentially encapsulates 68% of the results. 2 standard deviations away encapsulates 95% of the results, and then 3 standard deviations away encapsulates 99.7% of the results. And again, it's essentially 1 standard deviation away from the average, both from the left side and the right side, and then 2 and 3. Now again, this is known as the empirical rule, essentially that the results are going to occur in one of these 3 standard deviations. And again, this is really when it comes to the bell curve results, which is what you're really looking for. When you don't have a bell curve, it's typically because you have a lot of outliers, or your distribution is so scattered that it's not essentially good results, or whatever experiment you're conducting definitely needs to be adjusted, again, to look for more of a normal distribution. Wherever the plots are on your graph, that is essentially the variance, and you're going to have some type of acceptable variance, but if it's too scattered, again, something is not right. Now, again, how we actually would use this in application. For example, if you've ever seen the show How It's Made, they're typically producing some type of product. They're manufacturing. When it comes to the manufacturing process, a lot of the times custom machinery must be built. And essentially the engineer is going to use business statistics to actually see the production process all the way through and see how accurate everything is produced. Now, many products typically have to be made in separate stations, and then the pieces come together. Now, if it's a situation where 2 pieces must very snugly come together, there can't be a lot of variance, or essentially deviation from the exact number that it should be, essentially the size in this situation. So when it comes to producing a product, you're going to have so much slack, or essentially variance, that is acceptable. And again, it's all going to be dependent on that exact product. But an engineer, when they're developing the process, and then when they're initially testing it, they will see, they'll conduct an experiment in which they're doing a sample size to generalize the entire population, and based on that experiment, they will see if the manufacturing process is acceptable within the guidelines of what the business accepts. Again, you can use business statistics to make many different decisions. It's a little bit more advanced, but understanding how business statistics works will really help you run a successful business. If you have any questions regarding business statistics, please do not hesitate contacting us. Thank you.